Right. Well, a very warm welcome to everyone. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. This is the BCIS monthly webinar. This one's about construction materials, balancing cost and carbon choices on construction projects. My name is James Fisk. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of BCIS, and I also wear another hat in the industry, which is the chair of the Built Environment Carbon Database, something that we will be touching upon during today's session. This is a live webinar, so things could go horribly wrong. Hopefully they won't, touch wood. Yeah, it's being recorded. Any sort of technical issues, it's being recorded, and this webinar will be made available on bcis.co.uk shortly after this has actually gone out. So a bit of housekeeping before we start. Hopefully you're seeing a change of screen. This depicts the toolbar at the bottom of the webinar program that you're going through at the moment. Please do ask questions using that question mark. We are allowing time for Q&A afterwards. We'll try and get through as many of those questions that you post us. Make sure there's some really tricky ones for some of the panel members as well. We'll try and answer as many of those as we can today, and those that we don't get round to, as in previous BCIS webinars, we'll be answering those and making them available on through LinkedIn and also bcis.co.uk as well. During today's webinar, there'll also be a number of poll questions which will be coming up. Please do take the time to try and answer those. Again, the answers of the polls will be posting on LinkedIn and various other sort of sources. So yeah, your insight and input into those poll questions would be very much appreciated. After the webinar is finished today, you'll also be prompted to give us some feedback. Please do give us some feedback, good, bad, ugly, that's absolutely fine. Anything that you can tell us will help us sort of improve what we're doing in terms of the quality of these webinars going forwards. And yeah, the topic is quite a broad topic today, as we'll find. We're not going to be able to cover everything, so let's keep the conversation going. Use the BCIS LinkedIn group, post questions, get answers from technical experts, and let's continue this sort of debate and discussion online. Right. Well, today's agenda is very exciting for me personally. It's about construction materials, balancing cost and carbon choices on projects. The agenda is quite simple. We're going to spend a bit of time talking about why do we need to do this. We're going to spend a little bit more time talking about how we can do it, and I'm delighted to be joined by two experts in the field here. So Sonia from Sterling, I'll be introducing Sonia a little bit later on, and Neil Barnett from BCIS. I'm also delighted to say that we're being joined today by Andrew Langridge from Sterling as well. Andrew, my apologies that and that's an excellent hi from Andrew there. My apologies, Andrew. I didn't have a photo of you to put on this screen. So delighted that you're able to join us today. So balancing cost and carbon. Why? Don't worry, I'm not going to bang on too much about this. Those that have joined previous BCIS webinars or launch of BECD will have heard me talk about global greenhouse gas emissions, the challenge that we're facing in terms of this climate change battle that we're in. We are in the fight of our lives. There's the normal stat to remind us that 40% of global greenhouse gas emissions do come from what we're doing. They are anticipated to continue to increase unless we do things about it. And the challenge is, we're seeing the effects now of climate change. Undoubtedly, I live in Norfolk in East Anglia in the UK, and I'm walking past fields that, well, they're no longer fields. They're now expansions of water. The live examples of climate change are unfortunately they're happening. And it's up to us to do something about it. If we don't do anything about it, things are going to get worse. And I personally don't want to look in the eyes of my kids and hopefully one day grandkids saying that I had an opportunity to do something and I didn't do anything. So at the risk of sort of sounding a bit like Bob Geldof in Live Aid, sorry, showing my age a little bit, we have to do something about this. Ask yourself what you're doing as an organisation, what you're doing as an individual to address this issue. And please, if nothing else from this webinar, try and make a change, try and make a difference today. So that's all well and good me saying that, of course, but the challenge of and the often the question that we get asked is, well, that's great, we all want to decarbonise, or hopefully we all want to decarbonise and reduce the environmental impacts of what we do, but that can often come at a change in terms of the budget. So the common question we get asked very regularly is, well, how much extra do we have to pay for lower carbon solutions? What's this going to mean to my budget? What are those impacts? So increasingly, well, certainly historically, we used to talk about the time, cost and quality triangle, or a Venn diagram, as I've drawn it here. These three things are intrinsically linked. That if you wanted to adjust the time on a construction project, that would often impact either the quality or the cost. Likewise, if you wanted to change the quality, it would have an impact on cost and potentially the time of the project. So those three things are intrinsically linked. Where we're rapidly moving to as an industry is not a triangle anymore. It's a square or a four-way Venn diagram, whatever the official way of sort of explaining it is. So we've now got the environmental impact, or carbon, as I've written there, which is obviously the main sort of measure we talk about. There's a lot more measures, obviously, with environmental impacts, but the main sort of focus being sort of carbon. So again, carbon is now intrinsically linked to those things, that it will impact in cost. It could impact in terms of things like quality, and some lower carbon solutions can also impact on things like time when it comes down to sort of setting of concrete and other sorts of things. So we're now rapidly, as an industry, moving into this sort of fourth area, which is carbon. So before we sort of talk about how potentially we can do all of this, I just wanted to lay out a bit of the carbon data challenge that's going on at the moment. So we unlike cost data, we don't have a rich history of carbon data. We're starting to capture more and more information at the moment, but we don't have that rich history, that luxury of what BCIS brings in terms of the construction cost world. We don't have that yet in the carbon space. So when I'm talking about carbon data challenges, in the main, I'm referring to three specific things: the availability of carbon data, the quality of that data, and also things that are coming to light recently as the volatility of that data. So I'm just going to spend sort of a couple of minutes sort of talking through each of those before we sort of continue the debate on how we can balance cost and carbon material choices on construction projects. So first of all, on the availability of data, needless to say, unfortunately, we don't have a fully comprehensive set of carbon figures for all of the construction materials that we use. The good news is that it is getting better. So for those that are sort of following BCIS and connected in this area, you would have hopefully heard of the Built Environment Carbon Database, which is a pan-industry initiative that BCIS has been sort of leading and funding, along with RICS and a number of other professional bodies, to try and improve the availability of construction carbon data. The current snapshot of where we are with the Built Environment Carbon Database, those who remember the built environment carbon database will know that there's two areas of it. One which is asset data, project data, and the other one is sort of materials data. Within BCD product database, we currently hold about 34,000 product LCAs and EPDs. And some of these stats and graphs have been produced by Circular Ecology, who've been supporting us on the project. So my thanks to Craig Jones and the Circular Ecology team for pulling some of these things together for us today. We can see from the chart, hopefully on screen, that the age of that data, we are starting to see higher volumes of EPDs being produced for construction materials. Ignore sort of the latter years because it takes a little while to sort of process the data and get it in. I think by the end of it, we'll see that actually 2023 is also an incredibly high number. So the availability of that data is starting to improve and increase. Now, we've analysed that data in line with a new materials classification system that's been produced by BCIS and one of our colleagues, Paul Burrows. We looked at Uniclass and we struggled a little bit in terms of being able to use that. So within BCD, we've been able to classify both in terms of the BCIS classification system and also Uniclass. And this gives a snapshot. Don't worry, I'm not going to read or spend too much time on this. The slides will be available and the recording will be available in the way that I've said. But you can start to see that there's a good sort of spread of some of the materials data now coming through in terms of the carbon world, which is great. The issue, of course, is perhaps more around data quality. So as we solve and improve the availability of the data, certain things are coming to light. And some of these are my personal observations, and we can probably spend a lot of time discussing and debating all of these, but we don't have time today, so I'll keep it brief. So what I've witnessed and noticed from the data being captured in BCD is that mandated fields aren't always completed in EPDs. A number of the assumptions made within those EPDs are often sort of inconsistent, which is not great or easy if you're trying to compare one EPD with another. EPDs do go through a verification process, but my personal observation here that the levels of verification are obviously linked to the experience of the verifier. So the verifier might have huge experience in a particular area of a material, but not necessarily another one. So I think there needs to be some more thought around the sort of verification process. We are seeing that sometimes the source provider of the data has attempted to change the functional unit. That can lead to even more inconsistencies in terms of how they've gone about that translation of the data. Sometimes, in some cases, like EC3, the data is uncertainty adjusted. So the number that's being reported doesn't actually match the number within the EPD, which isn't great from a translation, for a transparency sort of perspective. But undoubtedly, the biggest challenge that we've spotted so far in carbon data and EPDs is the inconsistency of the units of measure. So some EPDs will be reporting carbon numbers per, say, meter squared. Similar products might be per linear meter. Others, may be entirely different things. And again, that makes it really, really hard to sort of be able to compare one item with another without having to go through a process of translating it and converting it. The other thing that we've spotted is that obviously we don't have EPDs obviously for all of the construction materials we use. Some of the manufacturers will produce one EPD to cover a whole range of their products. The cost of EPDs and the amount of work involved in producing them, you can kind of understand why the manufacturers have done that. But again, that does mean that you have to take that EPD and you have to translate it in a number of different ways to get to a unit of measure that makes it sort of easy to compare different products and materials going forwards. So undoubtedly, quality is an issue and something that we're going to need to keep on top of. The other thing just to identify is the volatility. Now volatility in the cost world is pretty well understood. Anybody who's been buying materials over the last few years will certainly have seen changes in prices quite rapidly. Over on the right-hand side, we've got a chart, which is the BCIS Materials Cost Index, that shows the change, the annual percentage change over the last few years of materials, and you can see how volatile that's been. But to a lesser extent, carbon data also changes, and it's worth sort of understanding and keeping that also in the forefront of your mind. You can't use an EPD from a few years ago stored on your system because things change about it. We're seeing that manufacturers are obviously changing processes as they realize more and more that carbon or environmental impacts are a big driver in terms of specifications of materials. So manufacturers are changing and adopting their processes. We're decarbonizing the power, the electricity grid. That has an impact on obviously the carbon associated with emissions of certain construction projects that are using electricity. EPDs do expire, and also we've noticed that they can be revised. So you can't just rely on the expiry date of the EPD thinking that you're using the latest, because actually that information can also be revised. And the other thing, obviously, is that because we are seeing increasing numbers of EPDs being produced, that the sample sizes are changing rapidly. So that can also have an impact when you're perhaps at an earlier stage of design, when you're using sort of aggregated. You haven't specified a particular product, but you know it's this type of thing. Well, if the sample size of that particular thing is changing, the carbon numbers that you'll be using at an earlier stage of design will also be changing. So making sure you're using the right data, this is the point I really wanted to get over at this stage. Making sure you're using the right data is going to become hugely important. We're seeing cases that I won't talk about here, but we are seeing cases of carbon audits sort of identifying the elements of greenwashing and other things going on. So if you're involved in this area, you need to make sure that you're using the absolute latest data that you can. Okay, so moving on to, that's great, James. Yeah, we've just thrown a number of challenges at us. let's try and get some answers. So how can we do all this? How can we balance cost and carbon, bearing in mind some of those challenges? Well, I just wanted to start by saying that as I've already had my sort of Bob Geldof moment at the beginning of the webinar, I won't go into it again, but everybody in the industry should be doing their part to reduce emissions. So it doesn't matter what role or what function you fulfill within the industry, you need to be doing something about that. And I stand absolutely behind that statement. BCIS is starting to feed data over to architects and designers through the likes of the MBS chorus system, so the specification system commonly used by architects. And the idea is here that we're just trying to get everybody to be able to speak the same language in the design team meetings, around discussions around what specifications, what items should we be putting into our design solutions. So everybody needs to be thinking about it, and everybody needs to be talking the same language, ideally armed with the same pieces of information. The most efficient way to measure and report carbon is to link it to existing measurement processes that happen on construction projects. And by this, I mean cost estimating, cost reporting, cost control, i.e. the role that an estimator or a quantity surveyor would be doing on a construction project. We're already measuring for this purpose. We must be reusing that measurement in order to identify sort of carbon numbers as well as cost numbers. So linking those things more closely together makes a lot of sense in terms of being efficient, being able to do more stuff, but also making sure that we're not being inconsistent in terms of what we're measuring and how we're measuring things. So yeah, trying to pull those sort of measurement processes of cost and carbon together is absolutely the way that we believe that we can start to solve some of these challenges. Now, there are further challenges. Well done, James. You've just as we're starting to talk about a solution, you throw in a few more challenges. That's brilliant. But aside from those carbon data challenges that we've already discussed, the carbon standard produced by RICS is complicated. It's just been revised and updated, and it's gone a long way to resolve some of the inconsistencies in terms of how we measure and how we report. But it has become a lot more complicated, and it is now an extra thing that somebody needs to balance and think about and train and be able to sort of deliver. So that is something that we as BCIS are looking into, and I'll talk a little bit later on in the webinar about some things that will help address those things. Carbon numbers aren't widely understood, so as a quantity surveyor such as myself, you kind of know carbon numbers, whether they're right, wrong. Cost numbers in terms of whether things are right or wrong when you see things like cost plans. We're not quite at the stage where we understand if we're presented with a load of carbon numbers, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. And again, I'll talk a little bit later on in terms of what we're hoping to help the industry do with that. The last challenge we're going to be focusing a bit more time on today, and this is again this units of measure problem that we were talking about, carbon data. So materials being reported per cubic meter or linear meter. We know they're different in the carbon world, but unfortunately they're also very different to the units of measure that we would often use for costing purposes. And if we're going to start to report cost and carbon and think about those things in the way that we talked about above, we need to find an alignment between those units of measure so that we can start to think about and start to tell people what the cost impact is of a particular material, and obviously how that translates and how that relates to the carbon difference. So i.e. answering that question that we started off this webinar sort of saying, well, how much more is it going to cost me for a lower carbon sort of solution? So I'm going to pass over to Sonia. Sonia, very warm welcome. Sonia's from Sterling, and Sonia's going to be talking to us about some of the challenges of working with EPDs. Sonia, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Sonia. I'm from Sterling BCIS. My background is interior architecture and design, and I have an ever-growing passion for sustainability and construction. And my love for innovation is what brought me to Sterling. Thank you for having me, everyone. And getting down to our topic today, we're discussing balancing the cost and carbon within our projects. I will be discussing the challenge of converting the carbon data we find in EPDs to the units we would typically use in estimating. I'll start by breaking down the goal. Our goal is having the same units as in costing. And what are those? We use different tremendous number of units. We use linear meters, square meters, cube meters. However, in the EPDs, we find numbers in units as meters cubed. This is not always relevant, and we have to go through a process of converting those in order to have them be relevant for us. How do we do that? I've created a workflow for that, and to start from the beginning, first we need to find EPDs, and from the second step we already need to decide if they're valid or not. If they're not valid, it's very important to keep them valid and up to date. This is a continuous and very crucial part of the work process. If they're not valid, that loops us back to step one. We need a valid EPD which is up to date. If we've passed that step, we can go on to step 3, which is check the declared units. And in this step is where our work would be getting a bit more complicated. So that brings us forward to agreeing all estimating units and expressing them in our calculations. In our calculations, they need to be Sorry, got lost a bit there. So on the last step is our actual calculation. If we move on to the next slide, we will discuss what is involved in converting that data into our declared estimating unit. So in the bill of quantities, we get rates in meters cubed, and in procurement processes, we get them as numbers. In this EPD that I've included here as an example, it's for concrete blocks, and it gives us the value for cavity blocks as at 1,990 kilograms of CO2 equivalents per meter cubed. Now, this measurement wouldn't be very relevant, so we need to go through this process by first step. First, we need to find out how many blocks would make up 1 single meter cubed. Then we need to divide the CO2 equivalent value by the number of blocks that would make up a meter cubed. And that would give us the CO2 equivalent per 1 single block. However, if you need the value of this in meters squared, you need to do supplementary calculations. And those supplementary calculations, first you need to find out how the number of blocks that will make 1 meter squared, and then we multiply that by the number of concrete blocks in 1 meter squared of the CO2 equivalent of 1 single block. And that is how we get our value.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonia. Appreciate that. Yeah, so my kind of takeaway there is that, look, it's all doable. It's all possible to translate, but it's a bit of a pain. It's in some cases it's quite
complicated.
It is quite complicated. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, Sonia. We'll come back to you in a little while if that's okay. That's brilliant. Neil, I'm going to bring you into the webinar. Perhaps you'd be so kind as to tell our guests what you've been working on from a BCIS perspective, and hopefully how you think that can help this challenge that Sonia has done a wonderful job of sort of explaining to us just there.
Indeed. Good morning, all. My name is Neil. I'm Supply Data Manager at BCIS. And yes, we have had a tremendous amount of challenge in pulling this product together. But the BCIS Cost and Carbon Materials Database is designed to address all of those sort of issues that James has outlined. The idea being that the sort of rich material database that underpins our BCIS activity estimating rates, we have a reference point there which we can pin carbon to. So this is our first step in doing this. It's an evolving product. It will grow over time. There'll be more materials, more carbon, and more features. This is designed to be an app that is constantly evolving. It's simple in its use. The user journey is a straightforward search, select, compare, and then report. So if we first move on to the next slide. So first of all, you will search the materials database. There's a couple of ways that this can be done. We've got the BCIS material classification system shown as tiles. That is a way to drill in to that material classification. We've built this classification in order to better group those materials. So this is quite a nice visual way to drill into the data and find the materials that you're looking for the details of and want to compare. And you've also got the option to search via a text string. So if we move on to the next slide. So yeah, but by searching via the BCIS material classification, if you float your mouse over any of the top level tiles, you'll see the sub-levels for that group, and you can just click on those and it will list all the materials within that sub-level group. Next slide. So here we're showing that you can search via the text string. for material, it will begin to show results below, or you can just search on that particular term. So on to the next slide. There we go. So the results of that search term will like a list of materials. You can either select the individual material and see the detail beneath, or you can select a number of different materials up to a maximum of 4, and then click the compare button at the bottom of the screen. Next slide. And this will bring back the more detailed results of the comparison. And you'll see below the images that there's a number of different sections to the data. So initially, you've got the general data, the general information, which is just what it is and how we've classified it. And we've also included the unit class classification and the BCIS unit of measure. Beneath that is the cost data. So this cost data is updated monthly. It's updated monthly by the BCIS indices, and we give an indication of the past 12 months inflation and the future 12-month inflation numbers beneath that. On to the next slide. So the next section is the representative carbon data. So as James has outlined, it's been pretty difficult to match data from the sea of information available on BCD, and as a result, what we've tried to do is to give that best match or representative data, and overcome some of those issues around the conversion of units to a common unit, which is the BCIS unit of measure used for the cost and estimating purposes. So you'll see there in the red box, we've got all the data that we've used for that conversion, and the numbers that we've used. The idea behind this product is that we would want to have feedback from the user. So we give visibility of that conversion data, and also of the linkage to the EPD in the BCD. So initially there you've got a link to the original LCA data. So if we go on to the next slide. If you click on that link, it will open up the LCA document, and you can see all of the underlying data that feeds our database. Next slide, please. And if you click on the carbon data feedback at the bottom of the results, it will open a form which shows you the linkage that we've used to BCD. We give you the opportunity to copy that horribly long GUID number, and also click a link to open the BCD portal, which allows you to search for that result. If you feel that there is a better match in looking through BCD, you've got the opportunity to put that into this form, along with some comments from yourselves, and feed that back to us. And you can also do the same thing on the unit of measures. So there's a bit more detail there about some of the notes that we've used to convert this data to the common unit of measure. And you can propose an alternative and also leave some comments. So just going back to that link to the BCD, if you go to follow the link, it will open up the BCD site. You can paste the link into there and pull up the referenced BCD record to view. Next slide. And finally, whatever comparisons you do, you're able to click the download link at the top right of the screen, and this will download a PDF document of the results that you've selected. And that's it.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you for that very, very quick overview. I mean, you've presented it in such a good way that it looks really easy. I think
it is.
It is now.
Yeah.
I think the amount of headaches to get to this point can't be can't be understated. Just as a, I'm not sure if it came out. How many items are in the materials database as it stands? I appreciate you say it's an evolving thing. What kind of number?
There's just over 10,000 materials in there, and I think at the moment we have around about approaching the 70% with carbon data in there, but that's getting larger all the time.
That's evolving and improving. No, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you, Neil. I'm sure we'll have a number of questions on this in the Q&A session. So thank you for that. We'll come back to you shortly, Neil. So I just wanted to give a little sneak preview of some things that are to come as well that will help answer some of these. What we hope will answer some of these challenges that we've spent a little bit of time sort of talking about earlier in the webinar. So as Neil's presented, we've been working up a materials database that links cost and carbon for materials together. That's been supported by the work that Sonia was talking about there earlier. So a huge amount of work from Sterling to help us do some of that conversion into this product. So again, my thanks for their support in getting us to where we are today. That data in the materials database links up with lifecycle costing data that we have within BCIS, and in the next few weeks we're going to be releasing a very sort of high level but still pretty detailed in a number of respects, a lifecycle cost and carbon calculator. This will allow people to select items, add their own data when it's missing, and be able to do things like benchmark costs against the BCIS database and carbon numbers eventually with the BECD database. And there's some examples of some of the outputs, both in terms of cost and carbon. There'll be official sort of downloads and reports that comply with the RICS standards. When I was talking about the complexities behind the RICS standard, as good as I think that standard is, by the way, it is more complicated. What we're trying to do is to make that much easier and much more accessible for people that wouldn't necessarily historically have been looking at carbon data. In order for us to decarbonize, we need to make sure that people are armed and equipped with tools and data that can support them to make the right decisions. So that's really what we're trying to do here, is to use that data. You've got the standard to one side, but actually if you just want high level quick reporting on certain things, you'll be able to use this calculator to comply with the RICS professional standard on carbon, and also, needless to say, I would hope, but the costing standards as well. So NRM1 and NRM3 in particular. So that calculator will be coming out from BCIS shortly. We'll be having a separate webinar on that. We'll be sort of taking you through, but fully conscious that people will need more functionality than what our calculator will produce. So we've been working very closely with Sterling and hopefully other sort of software companies to make sure that this one set of truth, this single data that we know we can trust and we can use, and it is very defensible. So again, so we're going back to that. At some point there will be carbon audits. We need to make sure that we can stand by the numbers that we're using. The idea is that things like the BCIS materials database will be available and will add the fuel, if you like, to those other software products when you need that extra functionality. So this is a very simple matrix that sort of shows some of the functions. If you want whole life carbon reporting and NRM3 reporting, then you can use the BCIS sort of calculator. But if you want more functionality, then the likes of Sterling, and again we'll be having a separate webinar with Sterling hopefully in a couple of months' time, that shows how the BCIS data links over to Sterling, and you can do 2D, 3D takeoff and package management and all sorts of other things that obviously, you know, a BCIS calculator isn't designed to do. So Sonia, I'm going to just invite you back very quickly, because I think I haven't seen this and I'm really excited by it. And I think you've produced a couple of slides just showing early sort of mock-ups, I think, of the BCIS materials data in Sterling. Is that correct?
Yes.
There we go.
So,
over to you.
In this screenshot, you can see the A1 through 3 values in blue. They're already converted in our preferred meters squared. And this is the carbon value for our product or material. However, this does not complete our work. We still need to address A4. And to finish the calculation, we need to add the mass of the blocks in this case. So the system can calculate the transport for moving our products from the manufacturer site to our building site. And if we move to the next slide, you can see the significant amount of data we already saw from Neil earlier. It's a huge amount of data to have, store, and keep up to date. But we can see BCIS is totally amazing at doing that. So in this screenshot, you can see that we're showing you the BCIS database ready for use in Sterling. And on the next slide, you can also see, if we could change it. Yes, in this calculator slide, you can see the resources for each materials. They're all linked to an EPD, valid EPD. We already have to check that. And the carbon calculator as well. This is coming in Q2 of 2024. And I hope we can get on another session to dive further into that.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Sonia. I think there was a lag in terms of the slides. I'd like to blame it on the technology, but actually it was me driving it, so my apologies. Look, I'm massively excited. You know, whatever we can do collectively to make it as easy as possible for people to drive down emissions. We will definitely be having a more in-depth sort of webinar on this at some point in the very near future. So that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Sonia. Okay, so yeah, appreciating we're rapidly running out of time. I've done a brilliant job of spending too much time talking about an area that hopefully has come across that I'm quite passionate about. Today we've talked about the challenge of climate change, needing to do stuff about it. And some of the challenges that we have to be able to make that as easy as possible to do. And we talked obviously about linking cost measurement and reporting with carbon measurement reporting, again highlighting some of those challenges. And we've only just started today. It's a big topic, as I said at the beginning of the webinar. We're not going to be able to cover everything, but we've started today to talk about what BCIS has been working on to hopefully help the industry to do exactly that. We had a sneak preview of some of the upcoming tools, calculators, and the data integrations that BCIS is looking, so that we can all do this in a consistent basis using consistent, robust data. Is going to be crucial to us sort of going forwards. We've covered quite a bit. I think I'm just going to invite the panel back. I'm going to see if I can see any questions that have been posted, which means I'm going to have to change my screen. My word, you can tell this is a live webinar, can't you? My apologies, everyone. Right, we've got a few questions coming in. So yeah, if I can invite Neil, Sonia, and welcome Andy again. Really appreciate you joining. You can share your videos. Come back. There we are. A beautiful panel. Thank you. Okay. lots of questions. Let's fly through some of them. What construction elements do the panel think is lacking in carbon benchmark data? Who would like to have a little go at that? Go on then, Andy. Don't be polite.
Probably most things don't have a really deep carbon values yet. You get them sporadically from suppliers, and they're good, but I would say we're far behind where we need to be. I think there's a lot of empty gaps that we're trying to fill still.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you. So from my perspective, what I've witnessed is undoubtedly it's the M&E items. So I think we're, because they're, to be honest with you all, they're a lot more complicated to probably do. There's a lot more components and things in some of the M&E systems, and there's probably a lot more permutations of those coming out. You know, if you look at some of the advancement in technology to reduce operational emissions, you know, lots of components are coming out on a regular basis, and it does take a little time in terms of producing an EPD. So the M&E side of things is a little bit, I think, sparse at the moment. CIBSE have been doing some great work on this. TM65, I think it is, if my memory is good enough. So yeah, there's more work there that needs to be done. How do you balance the need for carbon reduction against successive government policies to increase house building? Wow, that's a whole webinar in itself, I think. Thank you for the question. Anyone feel brave enough to answer that, or should we park that and think about that one separately? Nobody's brave enough. No, I didn't think.
I think that's a really deep question. I think
that is
a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll come back to you on that one. I won't mention the name of the person that's posted the question. I think you know, there's a balance in everything that we do. We fully appreciate that you've got to build things in order to support a growing population base. From my perspective, it's finding ways that you can, you know, pick the lower carbon solutions, the lower technologies, in order to you know, make sure that additional construction that does need to go on is done in the lowest possible impact way. So yeah, we'll as a panel, we'll give that some more thought and come back with an answer. Could somebody just explain what an LCA is and what an EPD is? We had that question, and yeah, we probably didn't make that clear at the beginning, did we? Andy, or do you want to cover that one? Or do you want me to?
Yeah, that's so an EPD is an environmental product declaration. It's what the person before you who did any added value work needs to give you as a certificate to say what carbon is embodied in that particular product or material. So it's the environmental product declaration, and an LCA is LCA used to be a through life cost assessment, but it actually should be through life cost of carbon assessment now. So that's changing, but it's just about considering not just considering the construction cost and carbon, but looking at the overall effect of that particular asset across its usable life.
Thank you, Andy. Are you measuring items for their whole life carbon, operational carbon, upfront carbon, or other? I think, yeah. Neil, do you want to have a go at that one?
Yeah, so we're using the value which is called the GWP total, which is the A1 to A3 carbon value. So that is basically, you might need to support me on this one, James. It's not cradle to gate, is it? It's the production.
Yeah. It's cradle to factory gate. So
yeah,
what we do from a materials database perspective is that we capture the A1 to A3 number, all of the other parts of the standard, you know, in terms of the ongoing replacements, maintenance activities, the disposal, the reuse, the recycling, all of that is modeled in the calculator that I referred to earlier. So the A1 to A3, and the reason we do this is that actually we see a lot of inconsistencies in terms of the EPDs, in terms of the assumptions that are being made to report those other numbers. So the A1 to A3 number is a good start. But the concept is that, a material, there will be certain activities that you do on that material over its life, everything from maintenance and replacements. All of those things have to be modelled, i.e. you have to consider the whole life impact of all of it, which includes that upfront carbon, it includes the ongoing maintenance, it includes any operational and energy use. You have to consider all of those things to be able to pick the right sort of specification. So it's a combination between tools and calculators like BCIS and what we'll be seeing in Sterling, with that base data from the BCIS materials database will give you that answer. Are the slides going to be issued? Yes, slides and the video will be released. I'll answer that one directly. God, we've got a lot of questions here. Will we be sharing the poll results live? No, but that's a good prompt. Thank you for the question. There have been poll questions going on. Please do take the opportunity to answer those. We'll be sharing those on social media after the event, because I've done a terrible job, as usual, of timekeeping in this session. So we will make the results of those available to everybody who's registered within this webinar, and also on social media. Will the BCIS carbon data information be presented in accordance with ICMS, so as to ensure global consistency in terms of units of measurements, etc.? It's a great question. The number of reports that come out of things like the carbon calculator, and Andy, I'll move on to you and Sonia in terms of how Sterling are dealing with this. But with the BCIS sort of calculator, that again we're going to have a separate session on, there are reports that are directly in line with the standard, the carbon standard, which obviously links over to ICMS, and from a cost perspective, again links over to the RSES standards. So yes. Is the simple way of answering that. Andy, Sonia, do you want to just talk about Sterling there?
Yeah, I see I've been volunteered. Okay. So Sterling allows you to represent the asset data in multiple breakdown structures. So you can use ICMS. ICMS is not a breakdown structure. It's a different kind of thing. So it sits above, say, NRM. It sits above that. It's slightly separate. But yeah, you can use Uniclass. You can use NRM. You can use whatever measurement system you wish. You can pivot the data into that format really quickly. That's half the battle, was being able to make that pivot so you can serve the same data to different clients in the way that they can consume it.
Great, excellent. Again, loads of questions. Well, we'll just got time for a couple more. Let's just pick a couple of random ones out and see if we can make them really tricky for Andy, Sonia, and Neil to answer. As well as conversions into the correct unit of measure to align with cost estimates, is the database going to address composite items as well as individual items? So floor slabs, formwork in rebar included, etc., etc. Neil, do you want to answer that one for me?
Yeah, so at the moment, we would anticipate keeping it to the kind of basic material. The build-ups, if you like, to a more composite material would probably occur in the activity rates where we're constructing those things. So yeah, it's a challenge. Those types of items are a challenge, but at the moment we're trying to keep it to the basics.
I think it's a good answer. Yeah, the carbon calculator that we're referring to earlier will roll up into those composite type items. So there's there's a whole raft of libraries that we've been producing in BCIS to support those assemblies and composite type items that will be available in the calculator that we referred to earlier. Andy, yeah, obviously that data will be feeding through to Sterling at some point in the future, of course, as well. So unless you've got anything else to add to that.
No, not really. We followed this simple example of resources, complex resources, and then cost activity items, and you can mix and match those together exactly the same way as you can in BCIS to get your composite numbers out. It's not complex. That's actually, once you've got the base numbers that Neil and guys are into about, then everything else just builds on that. So it's not too bad.
Yeah, great. Excellent. Right. Well, I think we're just about out of time. As I say, we've had quite a few questions. So, as a panel, after this session, we'll pick up all of the questions that have been answered and get those circulated. So, my thanks to all of the panel members for joining this webinar today. I really appreciate the insight that you've been able to sort of show and share in terms of driving the industry forward on what is, perhaps the most important topic of our time. So thank you to Neil, Andy, and Sonia for your very valuable contributions today. Your work isn't done yet because unfortunately we've got quite a few questions that we need to answer and get back to everybody. But yeah, thanks again for joining, and to you all, my huge thanks for taking some time out of what is undoubtedly busy days to hear us talk about some of the things that we're up to. We've got some exciting things sort of over the next few weeks and months, and future webinars in terms of calculators and other things that will probably answer a number of the questions that I'm kind of reading that have been posted today as well. So yeah, please do take the time to give us that feedback that you'll be prompted to do. It's the only way that we can improve. And yeah, again, my thanks for joining today, and we look forward to seeing you very soon. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.